What's up guys, and welcome to the channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about the 2023 Infiniti QX50, but more specifically, just kind of Infiniti as a brand. So we just got back from a trip up to Michigan. We drove this about 1,500 miles there and back. And honestly, it was a pretty good trip using this vehicle as our vehicle. You know, comfortable, roomy, a lot of good technology and everything like that. Now, this one right here is the Sport model. It also has all-wheel drive, and it is around $52,000, $53,000 as equipped. And for this money, you can get quite a lot of other luxury-focused crossovers. You got Audi, you got the Q5, you got the Mercedes option. Of course, you have BMW X3, and then kind of in this category of car from Acura and Lexus, you got the Lexus RX as well as the Acura MDX. So all of them you can get for around 52 grand, well equipped with pretty much the same options that this Infiniti is gonna have. So with that said, is Infiniti an entry-level luxury brand, or is it kind of right on par with what you would expect? Now at this price point, you're not gonna get some crazy performance-focused vehicle. You know, an X3M competition with 500 horsepower is not at this level. Same with any AMG car from Mercedes or some crazy F Sport model like a V8 option from Lexus. Not that they even have a V8 sporty crossover. But with that said, for 52 grand, this is a pretty competitive crossover market. Now, the Nissan Murano Platinum would be the step down from the Infiniti QX50. That fully loaded is around $46,000. So this does have a little bit of a premium, of course, on the Nissan version, which it's loosely based off of sharing the same platform and pretty much the same drivetrain and everything like that. Now, let's take a quick look at this vehicle to see some of the perks with it. I think styling is really good. I mean, overall, it's a pretty sharp looking crossover. Really have no issues with how it's designed. You got all the blacked out accents being the Sport model, pretty cool looking roof line, and just a really nice design overall to where it stands out. You know, it looks like something a little bit more special. It looks much better than the Murano, of course, and it has that luxury sporty vibe that you're going to expect from an Infiniti branded vehicle. Now, some of the cool features for it when we enter inside is that this actually has genuine leather seating. It's got the Semi Aniline leather, and of course it's a pretty sporty spec for this particular one. Everything else, of course, is going to be fake leather. However, it's nice to see that you do have this vinyl material covering most of the door panel. You get this kind of carbon fiber look design to it as well, of course, a Bose audio system. And then the entire dashboard is also finished off in that same material. Same with most of the lower portion of the dash. So you're gonna see some nice materials all throughout it. It's not just plastic like you're gonna see in some even other brands. So it's nice to see that. Of course, we have a massive panoramic roof, and then it's really cool to see the two different screens, and you get a small screen up in the center. So overall, it's a pretty nice place to be with really good materials. And then in back, it's really roomy and spacious. You get seats that recline, good visibility back here, good headroom and everything like that. And they didn't even cheap out on the rear seats. You still get all this nice synthetic leather material for most of the door panel, and then the same genuine leather back here. So they do a good job giving you a nice place to be and all the typical amenities that you're going to expect, like a power liftgate and things like that. It's pretty roomy in here, and it's nice to see that there's even latches back here to pull to fold these seats down and flat. And of course you have hidden storage space and even more storage space down there. So I feel like they've kind of done everything to give you a car that's well equipped and a premium place to be. If you're buying a luxury car, you know, you want to be in something that actually feels nice. Now, the only two drawbacks I have with this car is the fact that there's not really any performance to it. Now, in this price range, the other cars I've mentioned all also have a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo engine. I believe the Acura does have a normal V6. If you get the higher spec one, you can get a twin turbo V6, but that's significantly out of this price range. So with that said, we get the 2-liter 4-cylinder, around 270 horsepower and torque. I think though the drawback is the transmission. So of course we get that 4-cylinder engine, but we have a CVT, and I think all the other competition either has a 9 or 10 speed or a dual clutch transmission. So the engine is fine, you know, having this type of engine, because everything else in this price range, this category, same thing. But the CVT, I think that just kind of takes away some of the driving dynamic to where it feels like a basic economy car. And I'm not saying that's a horrible downfall with this car, but that certainly is something to take into consideration. You know, we drove this quite a lot. My wife drove it. She's never driven a CVT. You know, her car has a dual clutch. She's also used to normal torque converter automatics. And in the slow speed, it's just weird how CVTs work. They feel a little vague as the power starts to work. It's just a weird transmission, and a lot of us just don't like CVTs. And it kind of hurts MPG. We got about 26 miles to the gallon, and when we drove a Nissan Pathfinder on this exact same trip, which has a V6 engine, weighs more, we got a little bit better gas mileage with the 9-speed. So I think this would do a lot to have a better transmission. And the Nissan Murano, of course, still has the same CVT. So I think underneath, this one isn't the most up-to-date car. I think they're still working on that, and hopefully the next generation is gonna get a real transmission. But that, I would say, is the biggest downfall with Infiniti. Get rid of the CVTs. You know you have nice transmissions, throw in the 9-speed, and I think that would make a big step up. Now, the only other thing with this car is I think that the technology could be a little bit better. So we do have the lane keeping assist and everything. You just tap this button, it'll come up on the screen, and you're gonna have the technology to stay in the lane on cruise control. You have the adaptive cruise control and everything like that. But once again, I think that could be improved. Now, I've been in BMWs a lot using their radar cruise, the lane keeping assist, and it works fantastic. You can literally set the car driving on the highway and just drive like normal, pretty much not even having your hands on the wheel. You can just relax in the driver's seat, cruising. This car, and same with all the Nissans and Infinitis that we've taken on the same trip, it's not the best. They need to fine tune it a little bit more. When you're going on a straight highway, it continuously will tell you to put your hands on the wheel. Even though you're going perfectly straight, it'll just keep telling you that about every 30 seconds. So you gotta nudge the steering wheel. You can't just touch it. You literally have to shake the steering wheel a little bit to tell it that your hands are on the wheel. Most cars, the way that technology works, it only tells you to put your hands on the wheel if it's continually hitting lane to lane where it knows you're not paying attention. I think this system needs to be a little bit more conservative with telling you to put your hands on the wheel. And whenever it does hit the lanes, it'll hit the brakes and slow you down. And when you take turns, like gradual turns on a highway, it'll slow down the car making those turns. I find that incredibly annoying. You know, when you drive a BMW or a Mercedes or even a Hyundai or Kia with the same technology, you pretty much can drive it like an autonomous car and they work fantastic. This car, I think Nissan and Infiniti just need to work on that and dial it in a little better. So I think the lane keeping assist and the transmission are the only two downfalls with the brand. They just need to update that and make them work a lot better. Not to say the transmission is horrible, but a real transmission would benefit the car and make the lane keeping just work better to where you can genuinely drive it almost like an autonomous car, like literally make it that good, because the other brands are that good. You can really just drive the car and you don't have to always nudge the steering wheel and shake it. It'll stay in the lane instead of wandering back and forth a little bit. I think those are the only two issues. Now, as far as positives, obviously we have the real leather and all the technology. This has double paned windows, so it's actually really insulated and really quiet. I don't think many vehicles at this price range actually have that. So when we were driving in this, it was comfortable. And for a 10-hour trip up there and back, neither of us were fatigued. This was actually a quick trip. You know, the first 6 hours was our halfway point, and then we switched drivers. I didn't feel tired as a passenger relaxing, and then when it was my turn to drive, I didn't feel tired after another 6 hours. So it does seem like a car that has the old school luxuries, which means it's a car that's just comfortable and nice to drive. The seats were good. I really didn't have an issue being in the car. Along with that, the sizing was perfect. I think this really is the sweet spot in the size of a crossover. For two people to travel like this, it was comfortable up in front. Visibility was really good just to see around. It didn't feel like a big bulky car to drive around. And then when we had the seats folded down, we had a lot of things to bring back. And honestly, we loaded it up pretty full, and yet we weren't above the window line. So it's a really good size of a vehicle, and this is something that I would consider as far as sizing. I think they really hit the nail on the head with the overall size and dimensions of it. And I think as a brand, Infiniti's come a long way. Same with Nissan, of course, the parent company, where they're making their cars a lot nicer without charging you an enormous amount. Cars are getting crazy expensive, and this one isn't even fully loaded. This is more of the sporty version. There is one step higher with more luxuries, probably a little bit nicer interior with like the diamond quilted leather and stuff like that. However, you can get the Infiniti one for under 50 grand. And I think they're doing a good job keeping their cars affordable when so many other brands are getting a little crazy. Now, I'm a big fan of the European cars. I really like them because of the performance options. However, at this price point, you're talking about, again, 4-cylinder crossovers, and they all kind of feel the same at this level, and even the other brands aren't gonna have the genuine leather, which is a pretty big selling point to a certain demographic of people. So I think overall Infiniti's come a long way with some cool options. We've driven the QX60 along with 2 different Pathfinders on this same trip, and once again, they were all pretty nice to be in. And I even had this in the snow. One morning, it had snowed about 6 inches, cleaned it off and took it around the cul-de-sac a little bit, and this handled really well. Keeping traction control on, putting it in sport mode, I could get the tail end out just a little bit to do a little bit of drifting, but it was a confident car to drive in the snow and inclement weather with the all-wheel drive system. So I think they make a pretty solid product overall. You get a nice interior comparable to the other brands. You know, if you're in a normal trim level Audi or BMW, they're not all too fancy. They feel just as refined as this, and they all kind of have that same normal feeling, but a step up from the typical brands like a Nissan, a Ford, something like that. So I think they have a lot going for them. They could just maybe update some of the technology, especially the lane keeping, just make that work a little better. Every other brand, it works perfect. This, I really didn't use the steering intervention and lane keeping because it hindered me driving. It was annoying, and I had to constantly remind it that I'm still there. So I think that's the biggest downfall that they just got to update. But other than that, I think Infiniti is a pretty solid option for a normal car with the extra luxury refinements. So what would you get? A normal European car, one of these, or would you just get the normal brands like the Nissan, the Honda, or the Toyota? Comment below, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But that is on it for today's video. Be sure to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button, stay tuned for plenty more content, and I'll see you all in the next video.